We all have friends, and when we're blessed, we have the good fortune of having friends like the one I'm going to introduce you to today. If you're looking for positive energy from a positive human being and one of the most respected managers you'll ever have the good fortune to work for, you've come to the right place. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk. Meet this man and hear how he does it.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Joe Angel, is president of PMMI Media Group. They're located in Chicago, Illinois. He was the founding partner of Summit Media Group before his company was acquired in 2014 by PMMI, the Association for Packaging and Processing Technologies. With over 3 decades of experience in the packaging press, and through his leadership, his company has successfully navigated the fast-changing business-to-business media landscape. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Great to be here, Rob. And good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, well, we got to, and that's where we're going to start. We got to catch the audience up a little bit. So a lot of times in my interviews, I'm talking to people that I've met 5 minutes before we go on the air, but not this guy. We were friends in high school. We were in a barbershop quartet together. And do you remember the name, Joe?
Yeah, we were oh gosh, I'm having a blank.
Yeah, look at that. First question out of the gate, and I've knocked him on his rear end. The Good Humor 4, Joe. The Good Humor 4.
See, I blew it already, Rob. So,
all right. I see management is taking a little toll on you.
I'm thinking the ice cream 4. So,
listen,
Good Humor 4, of course.
Well, and also, although we were friends, and when you're in a group like that really binds you. But we haven't spoken, I'm guessing, in about 10 years or so. Believe it or not, it's been that long since we saw each other in Las Vegas. And then I think it was decades before that. So what you're going to hear today, folks, is 2 old friends catching up and learning about each other. But we were in the Good Humor 4. Joe was a bass, I was a baritone, and away we went. We had a good time with it. We ran it hard.
Yep. We sure did. We had a great time.
Yeah. So, okay. So the listeners can't see the smile on your face, but I see it. And, one of the things that I remember about you was you always smiled. So let's start there. Tell me what keeps that smile on your face and relate it to the business that you do, the way you manage, the way you work.
Yeah. Well, we've got a small company. We're part of a big association. My company was founded on just some great people that knew the business real well. And one of the things I've always enjoyed about, what we do is really just the folks, letting them, do their thing and keeping them motivated to, serve our industry, which is, a lot of people don't realize what we do, but packaging and processing is such an integral part of manufacturing, and it affects everything you do, about what you eat, what you drink, the vitamins you take, the pharmaceuticals you take, the prescriptions, hardware, everything. So one of the things that makes our industry so enjoyable, and it does bring a smile to my face, is the fact that we get to do an essential service, essential business, and covering this area. And it's funny because I'll be at a party and someone will say, "Oh, what do you do?" I say, "Oh, we cover the packaging area, packaging and process." And they go, "Oh, like bubble wrap and cartons, brown boxes." And so I always get a chuckle out of that because it is true. I mean, we obviously protective packaging is, when you get an Amazon package, it's, usually something you take out all kinds of wrapping and bubble wrap and paper wrap and that kind of thing. And it's changed now, but that's what people think of when packaging. They don't think about how that product got in the beer bottle.
Yeah.
They don't think about it. They're drinking the beer and they're going, how did the beer get inside? So it's kind of it really is a neat industry, right? And that makes me smile. So,
well, I get you.
And I think
got you.
our people feel the same way.
Yeah, well, and you know, it's interesting because when we met up about 10 years ago, and I want to tell you, I don't just throw stuff and tell people how great a person is or why, how much people like them. How do I know people like Joe Angel? How do I know his people see that smile on his face? I know because I actually did a program for you and I got to spend some time with your team. And that's how, not you telling me, that's how I learned it. But I also learned that night at the table. We went to dinner. You may not remember this, but
with Bob Crowley. Yep.
yeah, yep.
Yep.
We
Yep.
went to dinner, and I ordered tea, and in came in came this little box with this triangle, and I remember holding up, and I went, "Look, Joe, have you ever seen anything like this?" And he went, "Rob, that's packaging," and we talked about it, and that's what I think you're referring to, which is we see packaging all the time. We just don't really pay attention to it. And the reason why I paid attention that night, Joe, was because it was so unique. I'd never seen a tea bag like that before. Yeah, it's all around us. But I do want you to know that I know firsthand how your team feels about you. And that was one of the things that really, when you see an old friend and you get to see almost your kids, it speaks volumes of you. And that's what I learned that evening. I learned about a team mag and I learned about your team. So, okay, so let's stay there. My question is, and let's leave the packaging and just go to you as a manager. We've got people listening. A lot of managers listen to this show. They want their team to follow them in the battle. They want to believe in who they're following, and they want to believe that they have their best interest at heart. How do you do it? How do you, and we're using that smile as a metaphor right now, but how do you walk that walk with your team and get them to believe that you have their interest at heart?
Rob, it's pretty simple. It starts with trust. We build an atmosphere of trust. And so that's treating people fair, honest, open, and being transparent with them. And I think once you establish that, the world is your oyster in terms of a company development. Because we started with 6 people back in 1993 when I started my company back, Summit Media Group. And then up until we were bought in 2014, one of the biggest things that I had stressed was culture, and that atmosphere of trust was important, opportunities for growth, an organization where ideas trump seniority, I thought was real key, and also being good citizens of our community and so in the world. So we look at packaging. It definitely has a lot of impact because of sustainability in today's world and how important that is, especially with the younger generation who are starting to do that, do good type of philosophy. And that's what a lot of CPGs, consumer packaged goods companies, are looking for now to do good. So, right. So when we build a team, that's what I looked at. Those four principles I thought were key to our organization. So it's funny, back when we were purchased back in 2014, I gave a meeting. We had a meeting. We call them summits, and we do them every once in a while and just update people where we are, what's going on. Now we call them town halls. So but we were under negotiations with the company that was going to buy us, which was PMMI, and I couldn't tell anybody. It was, obviously we're sworn to secrecy, and I had to give this talk in June about culture. And it was so difficult because I wanted to really, one of the things that was really important to me about selling to a company, because we weren't looking to sell, they came to us, and we weren't even looking to sell. But one of the things that we didn't want to happen is for us to change our culture. And that was critical to me. So any company that did come in and showed interest, they had to have a shared interest in terms of culture. And that's one of the things that we established from the get-go from our company. I had 2 partners starting out. One retired, then I became CEO of that company. Then we got approached by PMMI just a few months later, about 9 months later. So that was critical. But those four principles I just outlined are probably the key to what we developed at Summit Media Group. And now we're fortunate to have an organization that believes the same in the same thing. So we share the same goals and the same culture, which I think is really unusual. That's why after 7 years, I'm still there. So, it doesn't happen very much.
No, that doesn't actually. When I was reading your bio, I thought, wait a minute, they didn't just get usually there's the golden handcuffs of some sort, for a year or two, and then out the pasture you go. You go ride your bike.
No. I still ride my bike, but I've got two of the three of the five partners that we have. We had three originally, then we brought a couple of guys in who were integral to our business. We made them minority owners. So and they're still with us to this day. One's my executive vice president. So anyways, so it's great to have that team, the core team, and then we have all the other the folks that really have developed the operations, and the sales team is very cohesive. And the woman we have as our VP of sales started as a receptionist in 1993 in September, and fresh out of Drake University, had no clue about anything, and she was just a go-getter. So we moved her into sales. Now she's our VP of sales for the company.
That's a great story.
Yeah,
really is.
I'm proud of it. I really am.
Yeah. When you can promote from within like that, and you have somebody that comes from the ground up like that, that's incredible. And I know that transparency is a big deal with you. I just want to lay on that for a second. I'm just kind of want to repeat it, just because we don't really see that in many companies. There are, and you think about it. I know as a Xerox employee, you could be happy with what I'm doing. You could be unhappy with what I'm doing, but the cancer is, I don't know what you're feeling about what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm left to guess, and it creates paranoia, and it destroys teams, and it destroys trust in management. And it's all that one word you use, which is just transparency. Sometimes the news isn't always good, but be transparent. Let us hear it.
When I gave this talk in 2014, to your point, Rob, when I gave this talk to our team before we were acquired, I did eventually tell them, obviously, in September when everything was finalized. But one of the things that we had gone through a very rough period, the media business had gone through a very rough period in 2008 and 2009, and so we learned what it was to suddenly drop about 35% in revenue, and it was a scary time. We were debt free up until that time. We had to go back to the bank, negotiate. The banks were pulling away from companies because of the real estate debacle. So it was quite a trying time. And so to reestablish that, that's where my transparency, that was my aha moment in terms of, I got to let people know that business is tough.
Yeah,
we had to lay off 20% of our force back in 2009. Which is only 6 people, but 6 people impacted, and but I had to let people know, listen, guys, it's tough. We're going through a tough time, so we got to tighten our belt, just like we do now. So now I have quarterly town halls, and through a survey that we do an employee survey, a satisfaction survey every year. We get feedback from people about what they like, what they don't like, and it's all anonymous. So, they don't hold back. And one of the biggest things that I heard that they really appreciate was the transparency with financials.
Right.
So we put our goal on the screen in the town halls and say, hey, this is our goal. This is what we all have to do to get there. And if we don't, here's what's going to happen. Yeah. So it's and if we do, here's what's going to happen. And more importantly, so that transparency, I can't tell you, Rob, how much people appreciate that, as well as being transparent with with other sensitive things like gender identity, you know, work-life balance, that type of thing. Anything that you have that affects their personal life and their families. You know, walking down the hall and say, "Hey, how'd the soccer game go with Charlie? You know, I hope they won, or hope they did okay." And you know, they love that kind of thing. And so, as a smaller company, it's a little easier for us than a big, you know, if you're big Dell or IBM or whatever. But it does mean a lot to have that personal interaction.
Yeah, but you know, it's a cultural thing, Joe. I work for some big companies, and I can tell you that when the culture's right, for instance, Xerox, was into leadership through quality improvement, problem solving. That wasn't decided regionally. That's the way we did business.
Yeah,
and so, what you're describing, actually, I'm not going to give a pass on bigger companies that they can't implement something like this, because they most certainly can. Right down to what you mentioned, which was anonymous feedback. So that because that's going to get you your true report card. The fact that you're doing that lets you be proactive on a lot of things you're doing. So when you put out a fire, it's not a fire; it's a little bit of smoke, and we get on that.
And Rob, is even more important during COVID, when we've always had more of a remote situation, because we have a lot of operations, a lot of web developers that are remote. They don't come in the office. And so our office staff is not that big here in Chicago. Now, our corporate office in Herndon is, that most of them go in the office. But it was so important, that transparency, that communication during COVID as well, to keep people engaged and keep people from, going to their computers at 10 o'clock at night, answering emails. Because that's one of the things that you do when you work at home. I'll go to, pick up my kids at school and have dinner, and then I'll go back to my computer. And some people just have that mentality, but we try to say, hey, listen, you got to, cut the cord, give yourself some time. But
yeah, I see a hashtag quarterly town halls catching on virally. I think we should launch that one today.
Quarterly town hall,
love
it's
it.
been great. And what we do an employee spotlight every town hall. So we give the spotlight to a person, to not just show what they do in the company, but who they are as a person. So our recent one was our director of marketing. She showed a picture of, she loves to boat. That she showed her family on her boat and up in Michigan, and dressing up their boat for Halloween or whatever it may be, or something like that. But it shows their human side, or if they're a pet lover or whatever hobby, but it shows them as a person. And you can't believe how many neat things we found out about people in these town halls. We usually do about 2 per town hall.
Right.
Two spotlights, but it's great, and people love those.
Right. And, for people who are listening, now you're hearing Joe walk the walk. Joe doesn't do a ton of podcasts. I had to really twist his arm here. But Joe, you are a fountain of information, because what you're talking about, which almost seems routine to you, is not the conversations I'm having with people and managers. And I actually remember that about you, even in high school, when we really walked the walk. You were always interested in kind of what we were doing, how we were doing it. I was more into learning the notes and singing a song. But it's incredidible, because I've always believed that lessons are rarely dictated. They're typically shaped by experience. And you don't learn what you learned by a book. You learn through your experience, sometimes the experience of being that person on the front line who's not feeling safe, who doesn't understand what what information might potentially be kept from them. So let's turn the question around a little bit. Okay. Give me 1 or 2 lessons that you learned somewhere in your journey that had the biggest impact on your career or even your life. I know you. Those two, that balance piece is important. I think that line is very close for you. So I'll take either one, but give me a lesson or 2 that you could share.
Well, that's a great question, Rob. I think there are obviously so many things that dictate your path. and they can be luck. They can be, working, creating that luck. And so I think one of the biggest things, fortuitous things for me, was meeting a gentleman named Lloyd Ferguson. And I met Lloyd in 1984, and I was selling insurance for 5 years, something that I think we have in common, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a New York Life man.
That's what I thought. So, but I sold group insurance for 5 years with a company, mostly to educational to school districts. And I met a gentleman through a college friend of mine in Chicago, and he was looking for a Midwest salesperson for his publication. And I think that intersection right there was key and pivotal to my development as a person, because this gentleman became a mentor of mine in business and like a brother. I still stayed. He's the one he unfortunately had a stroke back in February of 13, but he's still around doing great. And he retired shortly thereafter, but that's when I took over Summit. He was my partner.
Right.
He was my boss back in the 80s, and he retired, sold his company, retired. I stayed with the company. I brought him back in to start Summit, and he was my main partner with Summit Media back in 93 when we started. And so that gentleman really, from a business standpoint, turned my life around in my direction.
Right.
And how he treated people, because
so there you go.
I replicated the way he treated people.
There you go.
The philosophy, and why people loved his company so much. When I went there, he had such a loyalty. I said, boy, I want to do that someday.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot of people will look and say, well, then look at this guy, Joe Angel. He got lucky. But you jumped on an opportunity. And we don't all do that.
I did. I broke a rule my wife and I had, because I told, my wife and I, Peggy, we had talked about me jumping careers, and I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And she said, well, let's talk about it first and don't say anything to anybody. And of course, the first party I was at, my college buddy go, hey, listen, if you hear anybody looking for a sales guy, let me know. And she looked at me and said, did we just talk about this? But anyways, but it turned out that he's the one that had a connection to his uncle, who was this gentleman who hired me.
Right.
So anyways, it's funny how things like that happen. And
but can I tell you something, Joe? And don't let Peggy listen to this, but because I listen to almost everything Ronnie, my wife, says, but I help people in career transition. I've spent about 12 years volunteering. And I think the instinct is that when we're unhappy and we're in sort of a transition like that we don't want to talk about it, Right. But that may be instinct. It's illogical when you think about it. You do want to talk about it. So you have this story where, boy, you kind of got lucky. You're at a party, this, that. But if you hadn't talked about it, it doesn't connect.
No, because he was in the packaging business. He sold packaging equipment. And that's how I got connected to Lloyd, because he had a publication in the packaging field. And so that's how it started.
Yep. And everybody has stories like that, but they're usually from random events. I was checking out at the CVS, and I started talking to this guy, and if we've got our head down and we're not talking in line and we're not talking at that party, those events don't happen. So some people will point at and go, well, that's called luck. And I say, well, the more opportunity to communicate and to network, the better your luck becomes. So I think it's a good, solid practice. Okay, now
the old Vince Lombardi, philosophy, intersection of luck. So, anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's good. All right. So we've been bragging about Joe Angel a little bit here, but let's flip it that one a little bit. Tell me something, and if you want, I'll swap with you, and I'll give you one too. Tell me something you failed at.
What I failed at? Well, Boy, you put me
That's
on the
good. It's
spot.
good. You got to look hard. That's a good sign.
Yeah. Gosh, you know, I can't say I haven't failed. I failed making the basketball team in high school.
Well, you and me both. We both got cut. I
Yeah.
was at that same practice.
Yeah, yeah. So I got cut, and I got you know, I think I haven't made it big in the recording and music business yet. So I don't know, Rob. I don't think I've really failed at anything, and I mean I can't. There are certain things that I've failed at relationships with some family members,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to change that. I'm going to make I've got a plan going forward to change that. So maybe failed relationships there, but
Okay.
so I think
All right,
that's
that
probably
works for me. Listen, it. First of all, I think it's very healthy that you're searching for a response to that particular question.
yeah.
Congratulations. I think that already says a lot. I'd have to search myself, and because you may or may not remember this about me, but I'm a very half full person. So and that's not a con job. That is really the way I think. So frequently when I'm not as successful as I want to be, I feel like it's taking me somewhere, it's teaching me something, but I never look back and I go, well, that was a failure. No, actually that really empowered me in a different way or brought me information that I never would have had. So I consider it part of what successful people do is they probably, you know what, maybe we're using the wrong word. We don't really call it failure. We just call it retooling. We call it learning a different way. Failing to me is with your head down, kicking a can and walking down the street. And I don't think an Angel or a Jollis does a whole lot of that.
No, I read this book last year, Rob. It's called Traction by Gene Wickman. I don't know if you ever had a chance to read it. It's really a great book, but he talks about, common frustrations, and lack of control was one. People frustration with employees, customers, vendors, or partners, or whatever it may be. What else? About when growth stops and how do you get that growth back. But the last thing he said, to your point, is nothing's working. So you've tried various strategies and quick fixes, and nothing works. And so your staff becomes numb to new initiatives. And that's when you really got to dig down and find out to get traction. That's kind of what the whole book is about.
Yeah.
Is about not looking at failures, but learning from that. And I know that's a thing you hear in business all the time about, the failures are sometimes your biggest advantages that you have, because they help you learn.
Right. Certainly the biggest lessons. While you were talking, I sort of started thinking, and I thought, when I was in the insurance industry and I was selling life, health, and disability, in a sense, I felt not necessarily like I was failing, but I thought, I'm not sure this is what I'm here to do. And I really questioned the career. And the biggest question I struggled with was, how is this really going to contribute to where I'm heading? And Joe, I will tell you that when I became a professional speaker, and there I am, an entrepreneur, and I'm just coming up on my 30th year now, the first industry that came after me was the financial industry. And why? Well, they said, hey, you know what? There's an interesting combination. We've got somebody who has the selling knowledge, skills, and training of Xerox and the financial industry experience of New York Life, of insurance. Hey, let's grab a hold of that cannon. And so I realized that, in a sense, what I had put down as something that wasn't contributing was a very important piece. And so I think for anybody listening, whenever you question where you are, and I'm not really getting spiritual here, I'm just saying, I think everything has a purpose on that path. And I promise you, it's going to circle back and go, who knew throwing darts would take me here? But it all seems to circle back.
Well, it's going back to what this guy says in the book is, confront your fears. I think says, thou shalt enter the danger, which I think is a great quote. And, and to that fact, you'd ask about other things that have impacted me. Obviously, I'm so lucky to have a life partner, my wife, who has supported me 100% and my family. Because when we were starting the company, 3 kids was not easy. I was on the road all the time. And so, but Peggy has always been there for me 100%. So that's, you asked about a couple things, or people that have, affected in business, my mentor there, but, my more important side, being there with me the whole time and seeing the good, the bad, the ugly. You know what I mean?
Right.
And still,
that's a good relationship.
and still being able to have a smile on her face. So
yeah. Well, that's terrific. Hey, Joe, you were telling me about that book. Have you ever seen a movie called Defending Your Life?
No, I haven't.
It's a good movie that you and Peggy can take a look at. I want you to write it down. And while you're writing it out, remind people who haven't seen it, because it's a strange little movie. For every 10 people I speak to, 8 of them haven't seen it. And the 2 that have will call it the best movie they ever saw. Very unusual movie, mid-90s, Meryl Streep, Albert Brooks. So it's got, he wrote it, directed. But Joe, it's a comedy of sorts, a romantic comedy, but it deals with a man who's died. And he is going to be processed in the universe, in a sense. And they're going to look at his life, and there's going to be a prosecutor and defender and a couple of judges, all they'd smile and say, we're not really, but we kind of are. Okay. And they're looking for events in your life. But the cool part, Joe, is this: the criteria. So what would they be looking for? And this writer's vision was fear. Were you able to live a life that was either ruled by fear? In other words, how many times in your life did you say, I don't want to do it because I'm afraid? Yeah. Or how many times in your life where you looked at the same scenario and went, I don't know the outcome, but I'm going for it. And it's such an interesting movie with a great message of leaning back and realizing, some of the richest moments in our lives are when we've overcome our fear. And even if we weren't, quote unquote, successful at it, we dove off that diving board. We went into the water and we're better for it.
I'm going to check that movie out, but you're right. Confront your fears. I remember when I resigned from my comfy sales position at my old publication. And, I remember driving home and thinking, what did I just do? I've got 3 kids, and I don't know where this is going to take me, but I knew in my gut that that I could do it, and that I had the gumption to do it. So there was never that doubt, and the support, like I said before. But I'm going to check the movie out. That sounds really
you'll enjoy it. And look, Meryl Streep, we got a big hitter in that movie.
Albert Brooks. Great.
Wrote it, directed, stars in it. So I think you'll like it. All right, we're coming down the home stretch. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what else would you do?
You know what? I think if I wasn't doing what I was doing now, I'd probably be helping an organization on diversity. I think that, something that my youngest son has really opened our eyes to different thinking in terms of just what businesses need to do. And I would love to be a part of the conversation with the business to help them with, where they're going with their diversity, with people, that type of thing. That's the serious answer. The real fun answer would be, I'd love to be I wouldn't mind sitting there playing in a bar, playing piano and singing at a bar 3 nights a week. You know what I mean? And
that's what I remember about you. Just you and your piano and sitting there with 10, 12 people having a martini and listening to you do your Billy Joel or wherever you go.
Joel, Elton John, Eagles, whatever. So that's the fun side. The business side, I still have a lot to offer, and I'm, plan to be here for a while. And I'm only, I'm not looking at retirement anytime soon, but I know that day will come. So I've been thinking about what I want to do, but I think that, looking at how I could take my smile and my energy and help another company. open their eyes.
Well, there you go. I think we're going to talk about this further, not today, but I really think listening to you, and I know you're going to think, oh boy, he must say this all the time, but as an author who interviews a lot of authors and mentors a lot of authors, I already see. I think Smile is somewhere on that cover, Joe, and that would be a wonderful mountain to climb. And seeing as you've just enlightened us on how you don't let fear hold you back, I know you're not afraid of a project like that. But that might really allow you to crystallize your thoughts, put them down, and because you're going to be a tremendous value to a lot of businesses and people, because we need more people to think like you. We really do.
Well, thanks, Rob. I know I can't write a song named Smile. It's already been written. So
all right. Well, we're going to call it Schmile. You don't have to change it much. Don't worry.
SCHMILE.
Exactly. Everybody needs to smile.
Smile.
All right. With that, I'll tell you this. I am really grateful to have had this opportunity to catch up a little bit with you.
B, same here, Rob. Yeah.
Learn a little bit from you. And I haven't seen you in a while, but every time I'm around you, I learn something. I'm just glad other people get to learn from you today. And I'm grateful you spent this time with us.
Well, to repay the compliment, I've learned that a lot from you too. I've read a couple of your books and really enjoy your communication and your enlightenment, which is big. So keep it up, buddy.
Thank you. Two barbershop quartet people from the Joe Good Humor 4.
I know. I see. I was nervous.
Mixing it up. All right, folks. Well, we'll do it again, the best that we can, and we'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.